I start the show planning, thinking maybe, just maybe, this is the week that we don't talk about Jimmy Butler because it's been such a evolving topic, and this week is not going to be the week that we don't talk about Butler. On Monday, the Miami Heat suspended Butler indefinitely. Nothing. Noting in a statement, I should say, that the suspension will be for at least 5 games, which not coincidentally takes the Heat right up to the February 6th trade deadline. In its statement, Miami said the suspension is due to a continued pattern of disregard of team rules, engaging in conduct detrimental to the team, and intentionally withholding services. This includes walking out of a practice earlier today, end quote. Nothing subtle there. The Heat responded on Monday by beating the Magic in double overtime. Bam, hero, big games. Kalal Ware had 15 in that game. Sam, we know, that Miami has been shopping Butler. That's nothing new at this point. Do you see this latest incident moving the needle at all?
I do, because on the one hand, you hear people say that the pragmatic move is for Miami to continue to wait, maybe even wait until the summer, force Jimmy's hand. There's no way he's going to turn down that player option for next year. That's what, most people believe. But that glosses over, like we often do in this business, and in this league, the human component, which is like the degree of uncomfortableness that this is very quickly reaching. My goodness, he was, back from the suspension for a very, very short time before it was off the tracks again. I think that clearly is going to be the pattern going forward for however long this continues. So I do think we're teetering on the edge of that threshold where Miami is going to have to look at the fact that if you can't get him to Phoenix because of the different obstacles that we're all aware of, mainly Bradley Beal, and get some sort of quote unquote fair value in return, then you're probably going to have to start considering these pennies on the dollar options from other teams to get this thing behind you.
Yeah, I just wonder, what those other teams are, right? Like, Jimmy has been pretty clear that he wants to play for Phoenix. We know that Phoenix is willing to acquire him, but that Bradley Beal, you talk about an obstacle. I mean, that's like an iceberg.
Yeah,
They've got because nobody seems to want him because he has one of the worst contracts, in the NBA right now, including the no trade clause, and B, he can have that no trade clause. And I've been told by people close to him that unless you're talking about dropping him into a contender, he's not interested in waiving that no trade clause. So what do you think the other, realistic options are out there to make a move on Butler?
Well, I mean, as you know, some of the teams that you hear, Memphis is one of the most interesting ones out there because on the one hand, I've confirmed it's been reported several other places that the Grizzlies were told that Jimmy was not interested in coming to their club. But you talk to some other teams about this and you get perspective on the fact that it's Memphis, very hard to get free agents out there. If ever there was a place where you would think about rolling the dice and kind of trusting that Jimmy would fall in line because they are a contender. They do have elite talent and the type of, honestly, culture and kind of identity that would fit him very well. And basketball wise, you can see where he would elevate them. So, I think that's an open question right now. How does Memphis approach this situation and what might they be willing to put on the table? Within that same kind of club, I had reported that it had been reported that Milwaukee was also told that Jimmy was out. But I was told that's not the case, and from both sides. And so the Bucks kind of loom. Now they don't have nearly the type of, assets in the cupboard to offer like Memphis does. But if Miami got desperate enough, is there something there? Because they're looking for options with Chris Middleton obviously struggling. And I think there could be others. Even in my backyard, I kind of wondered about the Kings a little bit. It's similar to Memphis where these markets where it's that cost benefit analysis, like how much risk are you willing to take on, to get the kind of guy that you typically wouldn't have a crack at. I think we're getting close to that point where that part of the equation, I guess, is coming more into play.
Yeah, I had heard the two teams I had heard Jimmy had been telegraphing no to were Memphis and Sacramento. Actually,
Yeah.
they were the two teams that he had been messaging through people behind the scenes, like, "Hey, don't acquire me. It's not going to be worth
Right.
it." I do wonder if his mindset has changed at all on Memphis. Now, I don't think Memphis has an ownership like Robert Parra that's like Matt Ishbia, who's willing to spend whatever, like would give
Yep.
Jimmy the kind of extension needs. But it is a good opportunity. He would fit in culture wise there. He may be embraced in that community, and who knows? Maybe this offseason, if they make a deep playoff run, and he's a big reason why, they're in a win now mode. They've got a bunch of guys in their prime, and they could, yeah, to your point, theoretically offer something that Miami would want, some expiring contracts and Marcus Smart and like Brandon Clark and maybe a first round draft pick in there. It's not ideal if you're Miami in trading a player the level of Butler, but I guess maybe beggars can't be choosers, which kind of brings me to the question, like, do you think if we get to February 5th, like, is Miami just going to take the best offer that's out there on the table, or do you see a scenario where they could play this thing through the deadline and see where the chips fall this summer?
I think to have an informed answer on that question, I think you actually have to know, and I don't know this right now. What is the NBA stance and the union stance on the Heat's level of control here? Meaning, if they pushed it to the summer, can they just send him home? That's an open question because the answer formally is no. But if you justify or kind of paint a grim enough picture of how it's going, then I think you can get support on that front, because the idea of having him in the locker room to me is untenable through
Yeah.
the end of the season. And then, so if the answer is he's going to be around, then my answer is no, they're going to trade him. Because again, go back to the human component. Bam Adebayo last night was quoted, after they beat Orlando, saying, this shows that even through the chaos, we can still win ball games. I mean, you can feel him like talking himself into it. Like you're not going to last kind of living that way. And I think, they got to get Jimmy out of there.
Yeah. Look, they still want to make the playoffs. They're fine forking over that first round pick in this upcoming draft, because we don't have to get deep into this, but it does clear the runway for them a little bit in the future.
Yep.
So they're still trying to fight for a postseason spot. It's just hard to do with, Jimmy's there and he's not playing. And now, reportedly he's not starting if he comes back. Like, it just doesn't, whatever chances they gave themselves to bring him back the first time around, it feels like those have just been gone. So I'm with you. I think that given this latest suspension, I just feel like Miami will eventually pull the trigger on a deal before February 6th.